Well, we're out with our Wonder Dog Pink, and we're just looking at here. Here's a grouping of bicolor boletes, or the new name is Burangy bicolor, I believe, that have gone by. They're at the end of their cycle, of course. They disperse ferns, and now they're basically just rotting away. This is the area that I find a lot of those in. Although this area, I've been finding chanterelles this year, but they're very, very small ones. I talked to some person who goes many more places and knows many more mushrooms than I do, and he said most of his chanterelles that he gets are on the small size as well. You can kind of tell whether a mushroom's going to get any bigger or not. If the top is starting to flatten out, you know, it's uncurled, it's probably not going to get much bigger. We just had a really good rain. Oh, there's a tree ready to go. I took some of the bark from a similar tree that was dead, and I just left it out in the yard. I said for a couple of years, and it didn't fall apart. You could really make good shingles out of this for shelter. It could even be for something that's longer term. Oh, so there's a new Alone show. It's called Alone Australia. Is coming out weekly on the History app. Now, it's kind of got some fatal flaws. I mean, the prize is $250,000. I guess that's big enough. But the people are dropping like flies. Every episode, we've watched 3 already, and I think there's only 7 or 6 people left. And the problem is, well, it's kind of twofold. Number one, they're on the western coast of Tasmania, the island kind of to the south of Australia, and it gets, where they are, it rains 70% of the time, so everything is wet. So you got to know how to start a fire when it's wet. You know, this one woman there, she had a roaring fire going and no problem at all. And then there's this other person who went out, and she had worn her ferro rod out completely almost in just a day or two. But you got to know where you can find dry tinder. See, now, everything's wet here now, but it's not wet inside things, at least here. A lot of this dead standing material is still pretty dry on the inside. And of course, we have that birch tree that I showed you. You take birch bark, especially off of a living tree, take a small amount. Don't go all the way down to the bare wood, but take a small amount. That makes excellent tinder. Will catch a spark easily. And there, they've been given, oh, these are some painted boletes that went by. I didn't pick any of those this year. They're supposedly good to eat, but I've done it in previous years, and they just don't taste good. Oh, look at this. See that white mushroom there? It isn't actually white. That's mold. You know, it's so wet and humid that they mold. I know one year I was in a place, and the place, the area of the woods I was in just stunk of rotten mushrooms, and everything was moldy. We're marking the trail everywhere we go, I guess. But that birch bark can make a really good tinder, and it can be like what they call a flame extender, because there's oil in birch bark, even in the older pieces, that will, once it's caught fire, it will burn for a while. So if you manage to get a piece of the birch bark burning, it's going to be easier to put tinder, you know, kindling on top of it. But you got to know where to find it, and Evidently, these people aren't having too much luck, most of them. And then this is one guy, he's got a little hole in his tarp, which isn't good, of course, but with the rain. But they were showing him he's in the tarp and it's raining, and he pushes up on the top every once in a while, and all this clean, fresh water goes on the ground. And it's like, that's all drinking water. One guy's smart, and I guess he's left his boots out, and he's drinking water out of his boots. But, rainwater, especially freshly fallen rainwater, is a really good source of, clean water. Now, maybe after you're set somewhere in a pool, you don't know what's gotten into it. Bird droppings, animal droppings, who knows? Or something could pee in it even, I guess. But if you're right there when it's falling, you know it hasn't happened. That's an excellent source. That same thing is true about snow, freshly fallen snow. Oh, here's a group of these mushrooms here. They have teeth instead of gills. Let me show you that. See, underneath here, doesn't really look like pores. It is teeth, they call it. I'll put the name of this in the video when I edit it, but the name is lost in my brain right now somewhere. So anyway, they got that problem. Too wet. People don't know how to start fires in the wet, or where to find dry and tinder. But, going out on the first day, someone goes out on the first day or after the first day, because they miss their family. And it's like, gee, why no? How in the world did you sign up and get on the show, and then you bail out after one night because you miss your family? I mean, you're there because you're doing something for your family. That's what most of the people are saying. Oh, she says, this is smell-o-vism. She's down here. We haven't been down here a while. Pink's been up in Canada. Not me, but my daughter and her. We've got a funny clip of her growling. My daughter, of course, stopped. There's, bison in the road, walking her direction. So they come in the direction of the car. So you stop your car and they go by. And my daughter thought it was amazing. But once the dog started growling, she became a little worried, because it was obvious that some of the bison were quite young, and they were with their mothers, and she was afraid that they might get cantankerous. But it was kind of like that's a Rousseau mushroom here. That's a large group of mushrooms, Roussellas. If something from the Rousseau family isn't present, you can't have the what we call now ghost pipes. It used to be Indian peace pipes, but you can't say that anymore, I guess. It's not politically correct anymore, so they've turned it the common name to ghost pipes. But they have to live off the mycelium under the ground, which is the main part of the mushroom. So they kind of steal food from them. They have no chlorophyll, the ghost pipes, and the Roussellas themselves live in a symbiotic relationship with trees and other, can be bushes and shrubs, and they'll actually transport. See, you've got some more here that have gotten real moldy too. Look at the bright red ones. There's some of these bright red ones. Now, it is safe to take a pencil lead size of any mushroom and put it in your mouth, taste it, and spit it out. Well, there's one variety of these red Roussellas that you do it. It's incredibly peppery. You'll taste like someone dumped a teaspoon of pepper in your mouth. So, supposedly they used it once to get people to throw up when they had swallowed something they shouldn't have. But of course, swallowing a mushroom shouldn't have. isn't that great either, so they don't do that anymore. But so anyway, back to the salon now. They're very limited by what equipment they can bring. They can't bring a bow and arrow, which to me is like a big flaw of the show, and they can't, I don't think they can set up snares. Because in a fishing line, if they put a fishing line in, they have to watch it. They can't set one up and leave it, because a platypus, an endangered animal, may get in the line, tangled up, and drown. So they have to be there to rescue it if that happens. Oh, here's some little brown, they call these LBMs, little brown mushrooms, because there's so many different ones and they're very hard for anyone but an expert to really classify down to the species level. You may even need a microscope to do it, chemicals that change color on certain parts of the mushroom. But, so, and wombats, they can only take a wombat if they hit him on the head, a fatal blow to the head. So that means, again, they can't use snares, they can't shoot it with an arrow. And it's like, it's almost like you set this thing up for failure. It's almost like it's in a wildlife preserve. And then you got the people too who are very, they work in the environment, this and that. So one of them is having trouble with baiting a hook with a worm, because of course the thing goes through the worm, the hook goes through the worm. And then one person gets an eel. Yeah, they're slimy. They've been used for foods. I think they said for like 5,000 or 7,000 years there. And the person thought it was too gross, and even after cooking it, wasn't going to eat it. Which again is a recipe for disaster. But so you get the people that are managing the land. Oh, look at all of these little mushrooms here. These little dots are all mushrooms, individual mushrooms. So the land itself seems like it's in a park, and it seems like the people are like park rangers trying to, I don't know. It's like you can't expect to live without other things dying. And, this mushroom here. This is interesting. These are probably the ones that actually glow in the dark. I took a stick like this home one time, set it up in the bathroom because I have no windows in the bathroom, closed it up. And by having a digital SLR that I could have the shutter open for 30 seconds, with the widest aperture, the longest setting, I actually was able to record the faint glow of the mushrooms. And they're usually only like a quarter to a half inch across, if that. But so here we go. We've got, people afraid to kill things in a land where you can't kill things. You're not supposed to kill things. And so practically no one's getting anything to eat. Someone got a fish, and someone got the eel. And one guy knows about plants, which is good. To me, if I knew I was going to that area, now maybe they didn't know where they were going to go, but one guy seemed to say they did. So there's this guy called the Bush Tucker Man, Les Hiddens, and he was in the armed services there. I guess he went to Vietnam too, I believe, or he set up some retreat for ex-Vietnam veterans to go to, wildlife type thing. But anyway, what he was doing was, and he continued this once he became a civilian, is he cataloged plants, edible plants in Australia, and dangerous poisonous plants. There's one plant that you can touch and you'll be in pain for 9 months after you touched it. Now that's nasty. But so he's put most of his things on the internet. He has these books, which I would love to get one of the books to read it, but getting something from Australia is like 50 or 60 bucks. And I've never seen them being offered in the US. Hint, hint, someone from Australia sent me one of his books. But I would definitely go on his website, and I would have scrounged through it and, you know, try to figure out some of the more easily identifiable edibles. But here we are back out to the road. We're at the Gorham High School is down this right way. And this is a little parking spot. We got the fields. We also have, I don't know technically if this part we were just on is part of the Robert Fraser Trail, but that area right there is as well. So we're just going to peek in on that side. There was an area where a lot of mushrooms were growing, and they happened to use that area last year, and they, you know, dug it up with wood chips, put some nice benches down, really nice. And I'm expecting the mushrooms to make a reappearance. You know, they might take them a little while to decide. Some of the mulch that people use is already got mushroom spores, the mycelium growing in it. So it's not unusual to find, you know, you're in a parking lot, like in a department store or Walmart, and you look at the little divider area and they've got some kind of mulch and everything, and there can be some mushrooms growing in there. Particularly, I've seen a lot this year of this mushroom called dog vomit fungus. It's called that because it looks exactly like dog vomit would. And we know what dog vomit looks like. So this is a little area. So like I say, I'm expecting, maybe it won't be for another year, but one time I'm going to come out here and they're going to be poking up through the wood chips. And then, you know, certain mushrooms will colonize the wood chips anyway. Unless they're treated, and, you know, in today's whatever, they tend to try not to do that because we're all into the natural things. So this is the trailhead of the Fraser Trail, Robert T. Fraser Trail. Look at this, they put a thing here so cars can't go down. You know, I mentioned something about, you know, my wife is in a wheelchair, and I thought, gee, this would be a great place to go. You would want to go when it's wet like this, but when it's dry. And they had these stones really close, and I said, gee, you know, this would be perfect for someone in a wheelchair if you didn't have those big boulders there. And this was on the other side, and I came down one time, they had moved the boulders. So that was really nice of them. Wasn't it, Pink? So back to the show. People are dropping like flies. They were restricted to take their 10 items out of these 40 items. But, you know, I'm sure I saw, you know, one of the guys packing his stuff up, and he had a compass, you know, an orienteer, you know, one of the folding compasses with a mirror on it. And I don't think that's an allowed item in at least the Lone series here, because you're supposed to be able to find your own directions. In another scene I noticed, it looked like the guy had a fire extinguisher. So they're worried that they're going to start a forest fire while they're there, but my goodness, with it wet down there, that would be really hard to do, wouldn't it, Pink?